Dating in the Victorian era meant navigating a maze of modesty and prudence. Luckily, there was no shortage of etiquette books to advise men on how to be manly gentlemen, women on how to be proper ladies, and everyone on how to behave during courtship rituals. Deciphering the often bewildering social codes could be exhausting, but if you wanted to be a Victorian player, you had to know all this stuff. Today, we're going to take a look at what you had to do to hook up in the Victorian era. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel and let us know in the comments below what other historical etiquette topics you would like to hear about. Okay, time to swipe right on some lessons in historical lovin'. At first glance, this nugget of wisdom from 1883's The Marriage Guide for Young Men, a manual of courtship and marriage, seems painfully obvious. But making love didn't mean the same thing to the Victorians as it does to us. This isn't the 80s euphemism for having sex. Victorians would understand it to refer to a chaste courtship or process of wooing. This advice is really just saying, don't flirt with every lady you meet. That's why it appears in the guide under the heading, Do Not Carry Your Politeness Too Far. Men were further advised not to assume that every young woman is eager to fall in love with them, which honestly is still pretty decent dating advice. Instead, gentlemen are instructed to maintain a dignified reserve. Failure to do so risks belittling yourself in the eyes of sensible people and hurting your chances at the match you actually desire. In other words, if you want to get the girl, don't chase every woman you meet. Men often love to shower a desirable woman with gifts, but how should the woman behave? Well, according to 1837's Etiquette Guide, The Young Lady's Friend, make it a general rule never to accept a present from a gentleman. While that might strike some as a bit harsh, the guide felt it was necessary. It warned that one gift will lead to another and encouraged men to offer their hearts to you. It also felt a firm policy of refusal would avoid hurting anyone's feelings and save a lady from all further perplexity. Anonymous gifts are no exception. Ladies are encouraged to put them by, out of sight, and never to mention them. 1860s, the Handbook of Etiquette advises engaged men to show their fiancés constant attention and never flirt with another lady, whether his bride-to-be was around or not. This advice seems to hold up pretty well, but of course, there's a Victorian twist. The handbook also warns men to avoid, even with their fiancés, those marked attentions and endearments that would excite in strangers a smile of ridicule. In other words, no PDA. While this may seem a bit of a bummer, the handbook didn't expect people to behave like robots either. Engaged lovers may exchange portraits, presents, and locks of hair. No kissing, but feel free to exchange hair. Okay. While professional or official visits were okay, ladies were never supposed to call on gentlemen romantically. This much is made crystal clear in 1882's Decorum, a practical treatise on etiquette and dress of the best American society, which states it is not only ill-bred, but positively improper to do so. Men had a lot more freedom in this department. How much more? Well, the same book says gentlemen are permitted to call on married ladies at their own houses. That being said, there were still some rules the guys had to observe. For example, a man was never supposed to call on a married woman without the full knowledge and permission of her husband. Makes sense. After all, if you're going to hit on a man's wife, you should at least let him sign off on it. Nowadays, they say chivalry is dead, but apparently it was still alive and well in the Victorian era, or at least Beadle's dime book of practical etiquette for ladies and gentlemen, published in 1859, thought it was. When it came to dealing with verbal attacks, the book expected a gentleman to be prepared to defend his lady. In cases where the lady is the one who started the trouble, a gentleman should be prepared to mediate or even beg for pardon on her behalf. Oof, that's a tough situation to navigate, and the book warns to not side too much with the other party, else you will show yourself in acting thus as ill-bred as he. Surely, if you can dance with a woman, you can speak to her, right? According to 1893's Rules of Etiquette in Home Culture, or What to Do and How to Do It, the answer is a big nope. Actually, this rule governs the incredibly specific situation of a man and woman being introduced for the first time at a ball for the purpose of dancing. It basically states that if you've never spoken to each other before the dance, it's rude to do so during or after. So when can you speak to your dancing partner? Only after the hostess has made an official introduction. Until that happens, the only way the couple can properly acknowledge each other is by lifting their hats in passing. A lifted hat. Drrrr. 1896's The Complete Bachelor, Manners for Men, advises gentlemen to reverence woman wherever you find her. It will confirm in you the habits of a gentleman and may be the means of winning you a genuine matrimonial prize. Oh, that's nice. And who doesn't like to be thought of as a prize? Anyway, this particular guide advises a man to become his lady's champion by always carrying her bag and helping her get in and out of trains. The book places great emphasis on those niceties, noting that travel brings out both the good and evil attributes of a man, and his behavior is on its mettle under these circumstances. In other words, if you really want to get to know him, take a trip with him. No gentleman should permit a lady, whom he likes but does not love, to mistake for 1 hour the nature and object of his intentions, says the Illustrated Manners book, a manual of good behavior and polite accomplishments, published in 1855. Women are allowed coquetry, but such behavior was frowned upon in men because it was perceived to be, well, womanly. As the book states, to allow an innocent girl to deceive herself, or, as is more commonly the case, to be deceived by the conversation of her companions into the idea that you are her lover, is ungentlemanly. See, you can't always trust your friends. If the man allows this, he's warned that such ungentlemanly behavior might have one of two consequences. First, he might wind up feeling compelled to marry the woman out of guilt that he got her hopes up. On the other hand, he might be disgraced, possibly whipped, or shot. That's a steep price to pay for male coquetry. One bit of etiquette advice that can be found in almost all of these books is that when walking with a lady, a gentleman always gives her the half of the sidewalk that's further from the road. The idea is to protect her from being exposed to the unpleasantries of the street, like being splashed by puddles or hit by a runaway carriage and things like that. It's a classy move, and some men still observe it in the 21st century, even though we have a lot less runaway carriages. The famous etiquette writer Emily Post actually added a brief addendum to this advice in 1922. She clarified that if he's lucky enough to be walking with two ladies at once, a gentleman takes the curb side of the pavement. He should never sandwich himself between them. Hold the mail. The Ladies and Gentlemen's Etiquette, a complete manual of the manners and dress of American society, was published in 1877. It warns that trying to make your significant other jealous is contemptible, and if the affections of the other are permanently lost by it, the offending party is only gaining his or her just deserts. In other words, if you toy with your lover's affections, you'll likely get what's coming to you. It's advice that's as sound now as it was then. In fact, the book's entire section of lovers' quarrels is quite the barn burner. It says that no man should assume a domineering attitude over his future wife, and if he does, she should get out of there before the wedding. A domineering lover will be certain to be more domineering as a husband, the book warns. Interestingly, it also says, neither should there be provocation to little quarrels for the foolish delight of reconciliation. Victorian translation, don't start fights just for the make-up sex. 1880's Our Deportment, or The Manners, Conduct, and Dress of the Most Refined Society, warns men against trifling with a lady, which it considers most unfair. The book firmly states that a man has no right to trifle with a woman's feelings for mere sport, nor has he a right to hide his own meaning under the guise of jest. Similarly, women are advised to take care not to give suitors false hope and to leave them restless and unsettled. Interestingly, the book frames such trifling behavior as affecting the sexes in very different ways. Women, it says, will likely have their feelings hurt. Men, on the other hand, are likely to act out. According to the guide, having his feelings hurt may cause a man to express himself or to shape his conduct in such a manner as he would not dream of doing were his suit utterly hopeless. Seems fair. The Great Secret, How to Elicit Love. is a section in Orson Squire Fowler's Creative and Sexual Sciences, published in 1870. In this particular chapter, Fowler advises men, you inspire in the one you court the precise feelings and traits you yourself experience. To Fowler, this means that a gentleman suitor's success must come from within, not from the one courted. Fowler was so confident in this principle that he described it as being as sure as gravity itself. Far less scientific in the next chapter of the book, Fowler claims that God created women to meet the needs of men, and the man should think the woman is the most perfect and best for them obtainable. It may not meet our current sensibilities, but not too shabby, Victorian age. So what do you think? What would be your ability to land a mate in the Victorian era? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.